Welcome back to the Dr. Supercoach podcast powered by Code Sports. You're on with Pig, and I am joined by the great man himself, Pistol. Pistol, how are you going?
I am not too bad. It's always weird towards the end of the season because it feels like you need to score like 2,500 to just like maintain your rank, and it's pretty scary when everyone around you like goes really big, and you're like, geez, like one or two bad players here this week could like crush my rank. So it feels really high stakes at the moment. So I did okay, and that was only on the back of Sheasel VC. So I had some not so good scores, but managed to finish with 2, 4, 7, 8. And again, for another week, so now 3 weeks in a row, I barely moved up. I moved up 80 spots to 1916. But I've been in this, range of 100 spots for 3 weeks. So I'm 220 points from the top 1K, and I don't know if I'm going to get there. I might, but I think the more likelihood I'm going to fall short, Pig, which is a bit frustrating after coming back so hard throughout the season. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to make it.
Well, it's still a goal to have it. It's a bit, I guess it's kind of out of your hands a little bit in terms of you have no trades left.
I used my last one.
It's kind of, you're just going with the currents now, but I guess like the captaincy choices, and you had an awesome one on the weekend just gone, is where to, I guess, try and make some ground. So that's one thing. But yeah, it is a weird point of the year, especially when you're playing for rank and you've got no trades left, and kind of just, it's out of your hands a bit now.
I mean, the captaincy is out of my hands as well because I just listened to your advice. So it's all your fault or your help if I make top 1K. It's all in your hands.
Well, just so you know, I've done my research already, and Harry Sheasel's going to make a recommendation again. So just keep it on him for the rest of the year.
Oh, look, I'm not going to do that. I mean, it might be wise. I've got my early thoughts. We'll see how that goes, though, for the rest of the year. But yeah, look, the team's in decent shape. Hopefully, I didn't get an injury this week for the first time in ages, so that's positive news. There was news about protecting Raul and him, maybe shifting forward or whatever. But honestly, how can he score worse than he's been scoring? I know he was okay this week, but he's killed me. So it can only be a positive thing. But yeah, as you mentioned, I had to... Oh, wait, there was also that news that McVeigh said Grundy might need a rest before the end of the season, but I can't do anything about that. So I guess we'll see what happens with that. And... I used my last trade when McGovern wasn't named because I'd already had Dawson on the bench and I couldn't cover two positions. So I traded him to Whitfield, and that went quite well. So hopefully Whitfield
that's nice.
Can finish. Anyway, Pig, just before we get into it, I would like to go through the Cancer Council. A couple donations, which we all really appreciate. Butler, I can't remember if I read those out last week or not, but I'll read it again if I did, or otherwise... thank you. Thank you again. Donating for dumb things, didn't check before the game started and had the C on Butters. Sounds like I had a lot of comrades who did similarly. May have been last week. I'm not sure. Wendy Hill Wizard says, forgot to switch McKernan and Humphreys between defender and mid, so copped a donut. Now, this is meant to say McKercher, right?
I think so.
This is, look, I'm not going to say to donate for dumb things, but I appreciate the donation. A little bit embarrassing. To Deckers, he says, donating for donuts. I reversed my last trade, which was to bring in Peatling to cover Nank via DPP once Ridley was hurt. With the positive Richards news, however, it was too late, because Richards then was a late out and hurt me twice in 1 week. So that's Joe Richards was a late in for Degoe and then was a late out with with sickness. So Decker's getting caught up in it, missed Peatling's monster score. I think he scored 130 or something like that. That's not fair to you, but it's donating for donuts. So we really appreciate the donation, Deckers. That's an unlucky one.
Absolutely. And I'm just looking at the rankings of some of our Dr. Supercoach Patreons. We've got 31 patrons in the top 1K, which is awesome. And then five patrons in the top 100, actually 5 in the top 60, kind of going for that elusive, top 10. So good luck to all of those kind of still in the hunt, and I guess good luck for everyone with Supercoach finals starting this week as well for most leagues.
Yeah. Did you make finals in many leagues?
I haven't even checked, I don't reckon.
That's a shame. I like, fortunately, the leagues only started, like my first couple of weeks were dreadful, as you know, and they didn't count for a lot of leagues. So
yes.
I've made finals, I think, in every league that I am in except one. So I must have, I don't know, I can't see all the leagues that people add me to, but I reckon I made a fair few leagues this year. So hopefully I can finish a year strong and take out some of the leagues. You know those like little, I guess, I don't know what they're called, awards or medals that pop up when you achieve certain things. Last year, it was really embarrassing because I won all these awards for like making finals. And then my final series, in the grand final, I had like I can't remember, it was like an 80K round rank last year. So I said like you made the grand final in like 300 leagues. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then I won 2.
Oh, no.
My percentage here of my win rate in the grand final is almost as bad as Collingwood's. So, yeah, it wasn't a great way to end the year. Anyway, Pete, speaking of, I guess, not great ways to end the year, taking a bit of a step back and self-reflection, what are your main lessons learned, do you think, now that we've had a couple more weeks to think about it since our last chat?
Well, yeah, I've been writing them down as I go, and actually, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago when you and JB were on together, because I was still making my way back from the catch-up, you guys started talking about some learnings, and actually there's a few of them that I also had on my list, in particular, like not getting too stressed if you don't have the guys going 120 that are like 650K, kind of not buying them at that price. Like trying to buy guys that might have dropped in a 550, but you can hope can bounce back, because the way I look at it is every time you do something in Supercoach, whether it's you make a trade, you don't make a trade, you put this rookie on, that rookie, everything you do, I guess, has a risk profile attached to it. So if you're trading someone in at 650K, like that's as high a risk as you can get nearly. Whereas if you're trading someone in at 550K, the risk's a lot less, because if they flop, it doesn't really matter as much. So that's kind of how I'm going to learn and view it, is that, look, yeah, those guys are going 120. It feels really crap, like when you don't have Sarong or Ryan for the first 6 rounds of the year, but there aren't really ever many players that average 120 for the whole season. There's usually only a handful.
Yeah.
So expecting all those guys to continue going 130 just isn't really realistic. So if you're buying them at that 650, you're probably getting their bad scores to end the year. And there are some, like Bont's, not dropped below 600 all year, but he's actually been the only player this year that hasn't done that. And last year it was only Bont and Clary that didn't, but Clary was only because he missed games. So it's a long way of saying not buying players at big prices. Just because someone's putting on these scores, just roll with it and wait till they get cheap.
Yeah.
Another thing is kind of trusting our preseason research. Like guys like Grundy, Nick Martin, Hayden Young, we kind of did our preseason research and wanted them. And then a lot of people traded them out really, really quickly, and then maybe wanted to get them back. So that's maybe trusting that a bit longer. There's probably a few others. I've also maybe it's just because being in the public spotlight a bit more, felt a bit more pressure to kind of rank well and do some different out of the box things, which I wouldn't have done last year when I had a really, really good season. I was just going for pods for the sake of going for pods, like point of difference. So I anti-podded Sheasel and Grundy and maybe 1 or 2 others for most of the year, just for the sake of if they went bad, then I'd go good.
Yeah.
And it just kind of hasn't worked. So a pod or an anti-pod, just for the sake of it. I got Chad Warner for that reason. I bought him instead of Neil and Dunkley were the safe picks coming off their bye, because they've done it a lot. They've done it many, many times before. I went for Chad Warner because he was a point of difference. I thought, oh, at the end of the day, even if he goes bad, he's only maybe going to give 5 points a week up to them. But like, he nearly gave up 100 points just last week to Lachie Neale. Having points of difference just for the sake of having a point of difference, I think is actually a really bad idea, unless you actually have genuine faith that they're going to be a gun.
Yeah, so I think, we look at Sam Flanders. I'm going back to the second point about the people hovering around, 600K. I'm looking at Sam Flanders' year. I know he started at 494, and he hasn't subbed tons the whole year, so you couldn't have gotten more consistent. And even once he peaked at 644 about 5 weeks ago, it's just so hard to maintain the price that he still came down to 600K around 19. Like, he lost 40K despite not sub-tunning at all. And, he's on his way back up. But I feel like you could almost get any player, and we say it every year, don't spend above 600K. And, yeah, it's really hard to... It's really hard not to when they're absolutely flying. But every player outside the bot has fallen to an achievable price that you can get at some point, and the risk was really high. We did I was going to say fun calculations, but that's totally the wrong word, that Luke Ryan, when not most people, but a lot of people bought him, at 660K after his buy, he has now been overtaken this week by Tom Stewart in one less game by 28 points. So Tom Stewart, who is 480 or for 460, you need to pay 200K to get up to Ryan, has outscored him despite playing a game less. Like, that's so crazy. Disaster. Like, that is almost couldn't go worse. And you did that times 2, right? Because now you also got Chad Warner over Neale, and that's probably more points. That you lost, and that's those points add up very, very quickly. So that's certainly something that's, I guess, continues to stand out, but it's hard not to get caught up in the moment. And the last one about the public pressure is really interesting because, we've been doing this for a long time. JB, Cheese, and myself, 9 years in the, I guess what you'd say, the public spotlight. And it's still hard. Like, it's not... It impacts the way that you play the game. It impacts the way you think because you're so desperate not to do badly. And people, I know I've spoken to many content creators before, and in the first year when they start, I often will say, hey, good luck. Just letting you know, it's really difficult being in the public spotlight because, you're almost fair game. Like, people are going to criticize you and people are going to watch you and they're going to say, oh, I'm not going to listen to you if you rank above X, or your opinion is not valid because you're not in the top, 1K, 2K, whatever it is. And people say, nah, I'm going to be fine. That's usually the response. And they don't realize that it is really hard to be able to maintain, your thought processes and your strategy when you're under pressure and stress to perform really well. Like, it's very different than, when I play, Dream Team and no one cares about my team at all. And I just, have fun with it. And I've in the real Dream Team, I finished 4th twice. And that's because no one cares. Like, no one's looking. So I'm like, yeah, okay, I can do this. And it's much more freeing. Whereas I'm like much more stressed about how my SuperCoach is going to go because I'm in so many people's leagues and I don't want to either let myself down or let the leagues down or whatever it might be. And it's so much harder. And I know there's going to be people listening and be like, oh, it wouldn't impact me, but it really does. And it's really tough. Sometimes it does get easier. It definitely does get easier, but it still impacts you. I think, shout out to the Skodfathers doing amazing this year. But last year, it was, he said, oh, this is really hard. I don't want to be in the public spotlight again. He flicked off, chose not to do it and then does really well. And that's part of what that pressure can do. It's hard. And I think, I tried to warn you at the beginning of the season. But it's until you actually experience it, you don't really realize. So I think next year you'll be better off for it, and you'll probably have a much better season in year 2 than year 1 of people, paying attention to, I guess, what you're saying every week and that additional pressure you put on yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. And a lot of it is like you feeling that there is pressure. Like a lot of people probably actually don't care.
Yeah.
Or don't even look.
True.
It's just that, I'm a content creator. I've got to actually rank really well. And I'll look back at my trades and I reckon I've made 10 to 15 trades this year that I would not have done last year. Like last year, started with a good team, made some good trades, finished 95th, like came really well, ranked really well. And the way I played last year, I was really comfortable with. And I've just thrown that out the window this year because I was thinking I had to like keep up or kind of get ahead of the pack or whatever it was. There's probably 10 or 15 trades that were really bad, but it was just trying to be really aggressive. And I never would have done that last year. So it'll be interesting. I've written down a few learnings that we've just talked about, some of them. Interesting to see if we can get back to, I guess, what created success in the first place.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. And when things aren't going well, it seems to like balloon very quickly, because then you have to come every week and talk about something that you're not enjoying as much because you're not doing as well. And then you have to like analyze it and painstakingly evaluate all of your decisions on how did I get to this point? And you're like, no, why did I do that? But then you have to do it on a podcast and tell everybody. You can't just like shuffle it under the rug. I mean, I guess you could, but that's not really what we've been doing in the last 9 years.
No, that's not my plan.
No, so I mean, it's a bit, yeah, it's quite difficult when things aren't going super well. But anyway, I'm glad that you've taken lessons learned from it, and it's just about trying to apply them next season. And I guarantee you, Pig, you'll only apply half of what you've learned because it's very difficult.
Half would be a good outcome. But I guess from my point of view, one of the positive things is my own team's going well, but actually a lot of the research and advice I'm doing to give to other teams seems to be working well.
Yeah.
So especially the captains video, like I'm recommending 9 captains a week. A lot of them are scoring really well. The issue with my team is I don't own a lot of them. So I'm recommending Tristan Cherry last week and saying, oh, guys, go get him. And he goes off for a 151. And then I'm like, oh, well, I can't do that. I don't own him. But at least the research is still working.
Well, I mean, that's the thing about still listening to people despite their rank, is that like not most people, but some people, do what they say, not what they do type thing. And you can really, it's all about the logical thought process. So if you're really vibing listening to somebody's thought process and how they make their decisions and how they discuss certain strategies or points, then it doesn't matter at all what their rank is. Like you can make your own decisions at the end of the day. I mean, I implore everyone to do that. But it's about how they present the arguments, discuss the arguments, and sort of go through almost the pros and cons. And that's the part I think that makes, I guess, content creation so valuable. And rank is almost irrelevant at that. So it's kind of like the first thing people think of when they're trying to find a podcast, but it's really like, I don't think it's as valuable as most people probably think it is. And it's not easy to do in the public eye as well. Yeah. Anyway, Pick, I'm gonna ask you some podcast questions. There's some that are right up your alley. I'm gonna go out of order to trick you up for no reason.
Hello.
Troy Golden Girls has asked, questions for defender options in SuperCoach finals, the last 4 rounds. Who has the best DFS rating for matchups out of this group? And he said Whitfield, Clark, Stewart, Ed Richards, Yo, McGovern, and Nick Martin. And I'm sure you can add your own to that group as well, just for a completed set of data.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have had a look at these names and gone through DFS. And there's a couple of good options here. Whitfield, I think I like. He has a slightly positive run, so he's got kind of 2 medium-ish, but then he brings it home in his last 2 with Freo and Bulldogs, who are really good matchups for his position, and he is someone susceptible to a tag, and I don't think Freo and Bulldogs will tag. So Whitfield, I do like, especially if you're think you're going to kind of cruise through the first 2 rounds and then really want someone for the last 2. I think he's awesome for that. Jordan Clark, I'm not interested at all. He has a really hard run to finish the year. Tom Stewart is actually my favourite out of all this group. He has a very, very good run. Geelong actually have the second easiest run home for inside midfielders, which he has been playing, especially this week against Adelaide. Little spoiler, he makes my captain video.
Oh my God, it's going to kill me.
And then round 24, the last round of the season against West Coast. That could be another big one. So, yeah, Tom Stewart, the role he's playing at the moment, he's about 70% CBAs, gets a lot of possessions, but then floats back. He's kind of, over the last 5 weeks since he's been playing midfield, he's getting high 20s possessions every week, but combining it, I don't think he's gone under 8 marks for that time as well.
Wow.
So, and he's had a few there that have been 11 marks. So he's combining big marks with high disposals. So his kicking efficiency's dropped a little bit, but it's not enough to really skew that. So I love Tom Stewart. I think he'd be the one I'd get. We can look at Ed Richards. Good this week, good next week, but then 2 hard ones to finish. So, and that's if we're talking about inside mids, which Ed Richards has been playing. So, not as interested. Elliot Yeo, I really like him for the price. He does have good upside. He does have 2 easy and 2 hard though. So, this week against Gold Coast, he should do well. Round 24 against Geelong, I think he should do well. But 2 hardish ones in between.
He's already missed a game as well, which...
Exactly, yeah.
It's a bit
and
risky.
like, yeah, it is. He's a big injury risk. I mean, Tom Stewart, Lachie Whitfield, you could potentially say they're an injury risk too, but
True. Touch wood.
probably not as much as Yo. McGovern, actually the hardest finish in the game for designated kickers, so I wouldn't go there. Nick Martin's interesting because Essendon play 4 quite hard teams to end the year. So when you look at it on paper, Freo, Gold Coast, Sydney and Brisbane, you think, oh, geez, that's a bit gross. But a lot of those teams actually give up a lot of points for the attacking defender kind of winger role that Martin plays. So he's not a bad option. But I think I would rank them Stewart, Whitfield, Martin for those ones. I've also added a few because there was another question saying defenders under 5'35" by Kieran.
Oof. Oh, this is a tough basket.
Yeah, so I guess I've got 4 more, maybe 5 more names that are in that like slightly lower price echelon. So if Troy also is looking in that basket, you could consider them. Stephen May, 3-round average of 113, and the 3rd easiest run home coming for defenders. Any thoughts on Stephen May? I own him in a few draft leagues, and he is ultra consistent.
I feel like he does this every year. He gets down to a reasonable price and then puts in like 95 average to finish the season. Like, he won't kill you. He won't like win you games. He's just like, okay. I've finished the year so many times with him on my side. I think the biggest issue I see is at this price point of below 535k. It's not many players are there. Like, the only reason we're talking about him is because the other options in this price range is like Wangani Miller, Yeo and McKercher, who are both, I guess, somewhat injury prone. Dale, who you mentioned, the Bulldogs draw, is terrible for that role. Houston, who's probably pretty good, but most people already own Houston. And that's it. Like, it's terrible. I think maybe Max Holmes, given Geelong's draw, is worth a discussion. But outside of that, I don't like many people here. I'd probably go Holmes first, and then I'd look at Wangani Miller for. I know he's got a hard draw, but the consistency I also like maybe a little bit more than Stephen May.
Yeah, okay. So a bit more context around those. Max Holmes has quite an easy run home for his play style, especially last 2. He plays St Kilda and West Coast in the last 2 rounds, which, you know, SuperCoach finals, they could be big scores for defenders. You told me off air beforehand that he's actually playing a bit more inside mid than defence lately.
Yes.
But as I talked about with Tom Stewart, they still have a good run for inside mids. Nasai Wangani-Malira has 4 kind of hard. He does have a hard run to finish in terms of the teams he plays, but the last 4 all are at Marvel at his home ground, and he does seem to score better there. So maybe that's an option. What would you think about the 2 Carlton boys? They have by far the easiest run home for defenders,
Yeah.
being Nick Newman and Adam Sard. Newman especially hasn't been in form, but it wasn't that long ago he put up 2 140s in a 3-week period, so he can do it. Sard seems a bit more consistent, although he also had a stinker not that long ago. Any interest in those 2?
No, I think, eye test wise and even not eye test wise, I think everyone can see it and smell it at this stage. Carlton are not putting up good performances, and it does impact the SuperCoach scores of their players across the board. Who knows what the coach is going to do to try and reinvigorate the players. I just kind of would stay away from them at the moment. There's too much going on. There's too much risk. I don't like, they've been playing Chera down back as well. Like, that won't last, so I imagine they'll swap things around. It doesn't really seem worth it when you've got other options at a similar price who I guess may not have the same upside as someone like Newman, but they certainly feel like there's a much higher floor.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. So, yeah, I guess we kind of answered 2 questions there. The 535k and under was one question. I think we both like Holmes probably for that price.
Yeah, I think I will say if you're looking for an upside pick, look, Matt Roberts, I'm not just saying it because of the 161, but he's got that rollback as that defender that he was playing earlier in the season when he was averaging, about 90 and reached 400k. He's gone in his last 3, 95, 114, 161. He just went up 91,000 in round 20.
Whoa.
And his break-even's minus 55. Not that anyone's cashing in. I just find it hilarious how expensive he's going to get. I don't think he's got the worst draw, probably middle of the pack, but if he's going to get a lot of usage just because Swans are not in that good form either, he might be putting out some decent scores. So if you're looking for an upside pick and you're really trying to cheap out, he's probably the best, cheapest possible option, I guess, that you can get.
Yeah, fair enough. And so if it was back to Troy's question, which it looks like Troy's got more than 535.
Does.
I kind of narrowed it down to Whitfield, Stewart and Nick Martin. You got thoughts on those 3 or which one you'd go?
Oh, who am I to disagree with all the research that you have done? I think, look, I traded McGovern, as you said, really, really tough draw to finish the year, to Whitfield, really great draw to do the year. So that I did actually look that up before I made the trade pick. You'll be surprised.
Well done.
And Whitfield has averaged 120 since his bye. So that's 8 tons in a row now. And he's only had 4 sub-tons for the season. So he's looking really, really good. And with a decent draw left, I think you just go for Whitfield. And then Stewart.
I think they're both awesome options. So, yeah, I would probably lean Stewart. You probably lean Whitfield. So either goes. Perfect.
So if I jump to the next question, and we'll do a similar thing here because the questions are quite similar. It's if Fisher misses again, who's the best replacement for the same price? And then someone's asked, Weissman. Wasman's asked best forward that's under 400k. So we can look at those 2 price points. And the third question, which we can kind of throw in there, is Luke has asked, what do you like better out of trading Dowling up to someone like Bolton to loop with a M8 or F6, or putting 60k onto a Dawson or a Rowell to try and improve in that area? Which one's the preferred option? Maybe I regret looping that in together. Let's just do the other 2 questions first.
Yeah, you just asked 3 and 2 of them are different. All right. A forward for around Zach Fisher's price. I mean, Charlie Curnow's there, still has a good run home, competing for the Coleman medal. He's a frustrating own, but I actually think he's still going to average 100 over the next 4 weeks, and I can't say that about many other people. Jesse Hogan, could he do the same? Could he have a crack at the Coleman?
I mean, they've just got such a hard run. I don't even know if GWS will win a game for the rest of the year.
Yeah. What about Cam Rayner?
So, Cam Rain is an interesting one because it's not someone that you'd ever really consider picking, I think, in SuperCoach. But sometimes a player hits a purple patch and you kind of ride the hot hand. And it's only 4 weeks as well. So it might sound crazy. But in his last 3, he's gone 100, 122 and 111. Brisbane are hit form. They finished with St Kilda, GWS, Collingwood, Essendon. The Collingwood-Essendon in SuperCoach finals for 2 teams that are rolling over and dying is pretty exciting. And we're shopping in a basket that essentially includes, Rayner and maybe Draper. If he's playing sole ruck for the rest of the year, you might want to look there. And maybe Jeremy Cameron put back up a 90 after last week's recommendation. I think with that Geelong draw that we've mentioned a couple times this pod, he could be the best option. But Rayner's put out some big scores. He's a huge POD. It's not a pick I would do. I know my playstyle would be to lean towards Jeremy Cameron, but I don't mind the Rayner punt for those that are feeling a bit adventurous. But it's not one for me personally.
I mean, he was a number 1 pick for a reason and highly touted. Maybe he's finally showing it, or maybe it's just a little hot streak. But for 4 weeks, yeah, I wouldn't be against it. As I said, I'm still not against Curnow. He had a good one on the weekend, and Coleman medal on the line. I think he's still going to be really good.
All right. Well, it's hard to go past that.
Maybe a few more names that we could discuss that are under 400k because the gross basket. Toby Bedford is a bit of a random one, but I've had him in draft since he's become a tagger, and he's just giving a flat 80, 85 every single week. For 400k, if that's all you got, that's not the worst thing in the world in your as your F6.
It's not the worst thing. I just feel better with Jeremy Cameron because it's kind of a proven commodity. If you're playing specifically for SuperCoach finals, you could look to somebody like Connor McDonald at the moment. He's put back-to-back tons, 109, 116. Bit of a flat track bully this year and has Richmond and North Melbourne in the final 2 games. The next 2 are not super easy, but, if you're looking specifically for the SuperCoach finals, you could do that. But, I mean, Geelong's got a good last 2 games as well. So, we're falling back into the why don't you just get Jeremy Cameron basket, which might really just be the best option.
Because he had a 30 the other week?
In the pouring rain.
Toby Bedford doesn't do 30. He does 80s when he's having a bad one.
Sure, possibly.
Maybe it's Sean Manor, like we said last week.
I mean, very much could be. He looks decent. So, I mean, he's playing well. Looks good. Can't really. No complaints here if that's what you want. I don't know
the timeline of Cornelio and Kelly, but Peatling, when they are out, is a jet. It's just good. when they play, he's either sub or not even in the team. So you'd have to really be confident that they're missing a while, which I haven't checked their injury report, to be honest. Harley Reid?
He's a hot head as well. It's a bit scary. Suspension risk for future years. Doesn't look great.
I might start him next year, but I wouldn't bring him in now.
Oh, yeah, we'll wait and see about that. Genuinely, Peatling, his last 2, 93 and 133. It's just, why did they give him a game? Like, he's so good. He's played as the sub, what was it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times this year. And the games that he hasn't been a sub, he went 72, 83, 116, 56, 111, 93, 113 as a forward. Like, that's pretty good.
Yeah, he is really good. He's funny. He's someone in our keeper league that I think he's gone through about every team this year because someone will pick him up for that big score, then he'll become sub, someone will drop him, someone else will get him off the waiver. And he's just been like the running joke of, oh, my team's good now, I've got Peatling. So I've got a soft spot for him because of that.
Oh, that's very good. All right, well, that would leave us back to Luke Reshdog's Cats question. He says, what do you like better out of trading Dowling up to someone like Bolton or Cameron to loophole with any given M8 or F6, or just upgrading a Rowell or Dawson to someone just better?
Oh, very, very comfortably for me, I would just put that 60k on Rowell or Dawson and get someone better. I really don't think there's, for me, no point in having a Shea Bolton on the bench because, he's giving you 70s. You're not going to loop it. Maybe it's like coverage if someone gets injured, but no, I'm just not about that at all because, we haven't seen Bolton giving you 130s in any time recently. And even if it's someone at 400k like we suggested, like a Jeremy Cameron or a Toby Bedford, I'm not really interested in kind of looping two guys that are 70s.
Yeah,
I'd rather just put it on the guy that's a 70 and try and make him 100.
So, I mean, Dowling might be better than Rowell at this point anyway, and Dowling might be better than Bolton. So, I don't think you're gaining anything.
I think he is better than Bolton.
You don't gain anything from the trade. I think if you're
No.
looking to upgrade Rowell to a 460k option, I mean, that's also very slim pickings. You're back in the Cam Rayner, Willem Drew, Kerno, maybe Josh Dacos if you want to have a go at it. Bucket. It's not a pretty bucket, to be honest. So that's quite unfortunate.
Gold Coast have the easiest run home for inside midfielders by a long way. They've got West Coast, super easy. Essendon, who are becoming easy. Then Melbourne and Richmond, who are both super easy. So Gold Coast have an insane run home. But is that just more going to help Anderson and Flanders? What do you think about Rowell actually taking advantage of that run?
I mean, they've already said they're going to try to protect him and shift him forward or whatever. So how's the draw for forwards?
Let's have a look.
Oh no, it's more kidding. I don't think it's not a good situation.
Matt Rowell is a forward. I'm not sure it's a thing.
No, it's not a good situation. I mean, Dawson probably has more upside than any of the players you could trade him to.
Yeah.
If we're back in that 530k bracket from earlier in the podcast, down back with those defenders, they're probably the best option. The best midfield option at the 500k mark is probably McCluggage, just because Brisbane's in form, but he's still not better than Dawson, I think. I think they're very similar, so probably prefer just hanging on to the trade for an absolute disaster towards the end of the season. So maybe just wait that one out, and you never really know what's about to happen. So I think you're better off saving the trade if you can.
Yeah, I probably agree with that because while we feel we're nearly at the end of the season, there's still 4 weeks left. A lot can happen. And if someone gets a 4-week injury and then you don't have a trade, then it's very bad.
It is very bad. Oh dear. All right, well, I don't really have many more questions. I think most people listening will be trying to conserve their trades. It's there might be some do or die finals. Is there anyone you think in that situation, in a do or die final, that you think there's like a really big benefit to trading out this week to get an advantage over your opponent that's worth trading out a fit body just to avoid having to play them this week?
To be honest, I haven't really looked at people that have a bad run coming up or a bad matchup this week. So, no, I don't really have anyone off the top of my head.
You told me Bailey Dale is terrible.
Well, he's got a hard run. I remember last week I said, if I had a trade, I'd move on Tim English.
Yeah.
And then he just stank it up against Grundy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another one. He's got Max Gawn this week.
Oh,
that
man. Why did I trade in English? Because I was $400 short of Sherry, I remember now.
Yeah. So just off the top of my head, that's someone that might be highly owned that you might be able to get off and then pivot to, guess what? Cherry makes my captain video again. So
there's going to be literally 200 plus point difference between these two guys, and I was $400 off being able to get Cherry instead, and this will be the difference between my team and top 1K, and that's very frustrating when that happens.
It probably is. Well, I'll give you the Uno reverse. Is there anyone you've identified that you would like to get out from under this week if you could?
Yeah, Bailey Dale. No, I'm kidding. Look, so many teams are in the hunt for the 8 that every game is really important. I would like to think that there's not many restings that are going to occur because no one can really afford to lose positions on the ladder. And at this stage of the season, we should have players in our team. We've got premiums 22 or 23, some have 24, that are all like big name, big game players, and anyone could have like a really good game or score at any point in time. So I don't think there's anyone that I can think of that just doesn't fit that mold outside of Raul. I think if you have the trade to be able to get rid of him, that would be great. But you'd need to be able to do a double and try and trade for someone that's 540 plus K, because there's just no one that's that cheap that's that good. Unfortunately, that's it. Don't have any more insight. I apologize.
Yep, no, that's fair enough. I think that will probably do it.
All right, Pete. Well, thanks very much for joining me, Pete. If you have any questions for your Supercoach finals, you can find Pig at Pig_DRSC. Find the main podcast at Dr_SC. And best of luck to everybody that has their Supercoach finals this week. Hopefully you win, unless you're playing myself. You lose. And we'll catch you all next week.